Hey y'all! Welcome to welcome to yet another direct action gaming session. Nailed it. My name is Sean. Yet another flawless beginning here on the direct action gaming channel because I'm a professional YouTuber and I totally know what I'm doing. Anyway, today, what do we have? Well, we've got a triumphant return of Zombicide to the channel here. And I'm super hyped. I've been wanting to go back to Zombicide for a long time because, yeah, Zombicide is kind of my favorite game. I have a lot of Zombicide stuff that I would eventually like to put on the channel here. I've got multiple versions of Zombicide, many models to paint and yada yada yada. But for now, we are continuing the second edition playthrough that playlist, I should say, that I started a long time ago. We're picking right up where we left off. This is sort of Mission 10, Small Town, but the thing is, I liked the last little miniseries that I did so much, I decided let's just try that again. And since the last series didn't last for very long, I'm like, all right, next week I'm just gonna go for Zombicide, and maybe I'll alternate between Zombicide and Fallout for a bit until I just run out of stuff to do for Fallout. Anywho. Here we are. We are doing Zombicide yet again, and we're gonna try to do the storytelling thing that I did last time. Last time I did decide to try and inject a bit more storytelling into my games. I had the idea for that. That's always something that I kind of wanted to do with this channel: tell stories through gaming. And actually, if I'm honest, I did a bit of research for this video. I've even made notes. One of the first bits of research I did was an article on oral storytelling in tabletop gaming, and it talked an awful lot about the various types of games and the storytelling aspects of those. And surprise, something like Dungeons and Dragons is the most story rich, because if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons, that's like almost entirely story, right? Like you and your friends sit down and you've got like pen and paper and dice and whatnot, and there's no real physical components. You just kind of make stuff up as you go along, and you're describing everything with words. And so it was a very interesting article. I'm going to link it in the description, and I'm also going to sort of point out. Let me make sure it's on the. Yep, y'all can see that. Okay, cool. I don't know if you saw my little update video, my little short, but I do now have Zombicide Chronicles. I've got all the Chronicles stuff, and that means at some point we are going to be doing some Chronicles on this channel. I kind of figure that Zombicide Chronicles is a great way for me to get started in tabletop RPGs, because I don't really have an awful lot of experience with that. I played D&D when I was a kid, very briefly. That was a long fucking time ago. So yeah, we're gonna do Chronicles, and I figure first of all, Chronicles will be a great way for me to get started doing that. But before we really dive into Chronicles, I kind of figure it might be good to get just, I suppose, some practice with the oral storytelling with, the games that I'm already familiar with and that I already know how to play. So we are just going to do a second edition game, but well, we're going to have a unique title, just like last time. I'm going to get creative with the thumbnail, and we are also going to try to flesh things out. I wrote some notes. I wrote some notes for the characters that I'm going to be reading. We're going to be setting the scene just like we did last time, because that was kind of dope. I liked setting the scene at the beginning of the series to talk about my protagonist character that I kind of created, Gordon, and doing that, talking about like who he was and why he was that way and all that jazz, really helped make it easier for me to kind of step into his shoes and play the game as Gordon, which is dope for a lot of reasons, because of course, like, if you're playing the game like that, all of a sudden, like, winning doesn't really matter anymore, right? Like, if you win, that's nice, but the goal isn't to win anymore. The goal is to tell a story, and that's just awesome. Now, not only do you not need to care about winning, you can also play the game in a way that doesn't even make sense, because characters will of course people do things that don't seem to make sense, right? And when we understand the character and who they are, then yeah, I am free to play the game in a way that I normally wouldn't, just to see what's going to happen by that person doing that kind of thing that doesn't really make sense, right? So anyway, we're going to get some practice with storytelling, and the title for this story is Playing with Fire. Okay, so based upon Mission 10 Small Town, but we're calling this story Playing with Fire. We have a cast of characters this time, not a single protagonist, so this will probably be the longest video in this series, because I'm going to have to talk at length about all 6 of our characters in our little team here, and then I'm going to have to talk a little bit about, like, you know, how I've tweaked the rules a bit to sort of make the world a bit more thematic for the characters that we are playing as right now. Okay, we'll get into all that, and it'll make a bit more sense as we go. So, right, without further ado, I'm going to start talking about the characters. But before that, real quick, I'm going to mention that most of the information that I got about these characters, I got from a neat little site called Zombicide.com. So in the description, I'm going to leave links for the article that I read about oral storytelling, just in case you're slightly interested in that. It's a fairly quick read. It's interesting stuff. But also a link for Zombicide.com, which, if you're mildly interested in Zombicide, I would recommend going there and checking it out, because there is a lot of really cool stuff there that you can find. They have galleries just of basically every Zombicide character that has ever been. You can look at all the characters and get little backstories and all the artwork and blah 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 blah. What's also really, really, really neat is they've got fan-made custom scenarios that that are freely available for download. You can download additional missions that fans have made, and that's really cool that they actually have this open source software that you can use to make your own custom scenario, and then it will sort of appear, once you're finished, it will appear just like it would have in the Zombicide rulebook for the particular flavor of Zombicide that you're trying to make this custom mission for. I haven't really done it myself. I've looked at the missions. I tried playing one of them. It was tough. I tried playing the Amy origin story. I could not beat it. It was kind of difficult. Probably because it was on a 4-tile map like this, but it was really only, since it's Amy's origin story, it just kind of started with Amy, and she got one other character to help her out, but you would have to find that person. It ended up being Doug for me. I don't recall if it's always Doug or if it's like a random character that you just sort of select out of your deck or something like that. But anyway, suffice it to say, I pulled information from several places to sort of correlate a bunch of stuff about these characters to sort of flesh them out, make them more real, and we're just gonna get started. We're gonna get started talking about these characters. To begin with, we're gonna talk about Phil. All right, here he is. I've got all the characters on their little player boards. We're gonna start talking about Phil, and for the most part, we're gonna start with like the official background, is what I'm calling it. That was the text that I found on Zombicide.com in the gallery for these characters. So for Phil, we have a bit of dialogue at the beginning. It says, "I'll cover you. Just stay out of my line of fire. Go, go, go." So that is a thing that Phil might say. That is something he might utter in a situation. Beyond that, it says, Phil is a policeman through and through, even though there isn't a police force anymore. He still wears his uniform, keeps his sidearm secured, and sees it as his duty to protect civilians. At least those that are still human. Being a cop keeps him sane, if a bit of a stick in the mud. Okay, so that was the official stuff that I found on Zombicide.com. Which, as far as I can tell, is an official site made by the devs, Guillotine Games. So that's what they wrote about this character. And now we're going to move on to my personal impressions. So this is going to be... This has nothing to do with them. This is just my opinions. This will include a bit of... some political opinions. We are going to get somewhat political here on my channel, and if you don't like that, I don't know what else to say other than this is probably not the gaming channel for you. Because I did call this channel Direct Action Gaming for a reason, and I have mentioned more than a few times on this channel already that I am a leftist. So yeah, that is the lens that we are using to describe things on this channel. And you kind of need to do that, I think, when you're, if you're going beyond just playing a game, like, as it's intended, if you're trying to tweak things up, and especially if you're trying to tell a story, you kind of need to interpret and analyze the characters and the world and sort of make sense of it all and describe why things are happening. So yes, we're using a leftist lens to talk about these things because that's what I am. I'm a leftist. So, all right. Beyond that disclaimer, I'm gonna just sort of go down the list here and talk about my personal impressions here for Phil. We're gonna unpack some things here. that's the first lefty sort of term we're gonna use. There's a lot to unpack here, and I kind of love that, actually. I kind of love how leftists will say that, and they mean it. They mean that there's a lot that can be interpreted by just looking at a few things that somebody has said or a few things that they have done. You can, examine what that is within the broader context of anyway. Moving on. First point. Phil didn't just used to be a cop. He still is one for some reason. Next point. Phil is obviously inspired by Rick from The Walking Dead, as he is also an ex-sheriff who keeps his cop persona after the world has clearly ended. And yeah, so this happens a lot with Zombicide games. They very clearly take inspiration for a lot of their characters from like pop culture characters, figures, and things of that nature. So Phil I think is modeled after Rick from The Walking Dead. Now, let's see, next point. Right, Phil's ultimate version. Now here's the thing. The squad that we are using here is the Ultimate Survivors Box 1. Right? For the most part, that's what this is. Everything in this game, by the way, it's all going to be classic Zombicide stuff, with the exception of some of the abominations. For the most part, survivors, enemies, all classic Zombicide. We're gonna get into all that, but for the moment, we're just focusing on our cast of characters. Now, the reason to mention all this is I kind of think it's neat that they made these ultimate survivors, or they're pretty much badass versions of the original characters that they sort of released with their season 1, core box set. So these very literally are like the badass hardened versions of those first 6 survivors. And that's interesting because to get more insight into who these people are, we can kind of compare the original versions with the ultimate versions and sort of see what is different between the two. How have they evolved over time in the zombie apocalypse? Drink a bit of water there. All right, so Phil's ultimate version is especially revealing, I think, since he still has his cop persona very much in effect. So, unlike Rick, he did keep that cop persona well into the apocalypse. Whereas, if you're familiar with Walking Dead, Rick ditched that cop outfit after a while. Like he only put that on initially at the beginning when he had barely any idea what the hell was going on. As time went on through his adventures, he kind of ditched it because he realized it just didn't have any meaning anymore. Like, he wasn't a cop anymore. So why is he wearing this uniform? Phil, on the other hand, now we see where I'm getting with this, right? Phil still has his cop uniform on. After all the crap he went through, he still thinks it's important that he assumes the role of cop. Even though, as we've already established, there is no police force, Phil. So what are you doing? Next point is, this tells us something since sometimes clearly past, and the only thing that's changed is that Phil has more weapons and a few scars to indicate a desperate battle for survival. So yeah, comparing original Phil and Ultimate Phil just has like a few more guns and a machete, and he has some obvious like scars on his face and one of his arms, which indicates that he's been through some stuff. So there's that. Now, I would question the official narrative that we're given about Phil's motivations. I know most see cops as a generally good thing since we're told they enforce laws to keep people safe. That is what we're told, right? We're going to introduce yet another leftist term here, propaganda. Okay, this is... I want to make it clear when I'm saying a leftist term, because what I've noticed is leftists will talk about stuff that the mainstream just doesn't, and it has no capacity to like understand, in my opinion, right? Because when we say propaganda, we're talking about how cops are portrayed in media, and it shouldn't be controversial or surprising, to understand that, like, the way cops tend to behave in, like, cop shows is not how they really behave in real life. Hell, I would argue that even on live quote-unquote shows like just Cops, where cops are just being recorded by a filming crew, that you're still not getting an accurate portrayal of how cops behave, right? So, long story short, media tries to make cops look better, right? It tries to make them look like the good guys, okay? And this is a narrative I do feel comfortable questioning, considering the George Floyd incident, among many other things that I know about American police. In fact, I read an entire book called The End of Policing by Alex Vitale. So I'm not going to claim to be an expert on the subject, but I know a thing or two. I know a thing or two about how American policing actually functions, right? And I would have to say that, like, George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests, if nothing else, that put a crack in this narrative that, like, cops are just good and they just help and protect people, right? That's all they do. They just enforce the law. It's just a good thing. Now, historically, I should probably mention that, like, American cops were originally slave catchers. And if that wasn't bad enough, they were also flunkies for rich business owners. And, controversial hot take, this is still basically true. In the modern day, yes, this is still true. Now, what do I mean by that, right? I'm not gonna... This is still a gaming channel. We're still playing a game. So I don't want to spend too long diving into all this stuff, but let's just say that cops are not here to protect people. They're not here to just broadly protect anybody who is a good citizen and whatnot. They primarily enforce private property laws through violence, right? That is what cops do. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more into this, though. We're going to talk about this just a bit more. My next point is Americans used to have a very different view of cops because, of course, the very term cop is a very old and somewhat derogatory slang word which generally implies catching, seizing, capturing, or snatching. Okay, so remember, around the Reconstruction era, we did not have police forces like we do now in the modern day. We just didn't. America just didn't have that. You had people that just literally caught slaves. Okay, and I mean, when I say that this is still kind of happening, it's like, yeah, that's what cops do. Their primary sort of function is securing property in very much the same way that they originally did by catching slaves, because slaves were property, right? So you fast forward, and sooner or later you got cops showing up to Henry Ford's factory to smack around a bunch of workers that were having a sit-down strike, okay? And I shouldn't have to say any more beyond that. Like, cops aren't great. And yeah, that's basically my next point. As you can probably tell, I don't like cops. You might, but I don't. I'd like to think I'm definitely not alone in this either, because again, Black Lives Matter. Now, you may not like Black Lives Matter either. I don't care. I think they had a point. And so, therefore, I'd say Phil is actually quite an asshole. He is. I don't accept this initial narrative that we're given that, like, all he wants to do is protect the people because laws are good, and he just, being a cop, keeps him sane. Even after all that, though, notice towards the end it says, if not a bit of a stick in the mud. I wonder why they feel the need to say that, right? So, yeah. Next point is, I think what Phil actually enjoys most about his cop persona is the authority the badge and the gun gave him. Emphasis on gave, right? Phil is in a whole new world now, and that badge doesn't really mean anything. The gun does, the badge doesn't. Neither does the uniform. Phil seems to think it does, though. So now maybe we're starting to see the problem here, right? So next point is he likes ordering people around, and he especially likes the fact that he very often faces no pushback for the abuse that he deals out. Now, again, this is something that used to be true. This very much used to be true when the world still kind of existed in, the more traditional sense, when there was a government, when there were laws. Phil was able to lie. He was able to be largely immune to the things that he did. And if you've ever heard about, crooked cops doing crooked things, it's not just an individual thing. It's a systemic thing. They are allowed, if not sometimes I would say incentivized, to abuse people, and they just kind of get away with it. And that does do something to them on an individual level, and I'll get into that in a bit. So I'm going to say that almost nobody in our little band actually likes Phil, right? So since we're talking about a cast of characters here, we kind of need to get into the group dynamics as well, rather than just talking about like the individual characters and who they are, because they are a team and they kind of have to work together. So it will be especially important to understand how they feel about each other, especially if we would like to continue this little story beyond this particular mission, right? So last point, Ultimate Phil starts the game with a shotgun, and he still has his lifesaver ability as well, which means he is indeed good at seizing people. Remember, cop. Cop means to seize, more or less. It's just now he actually does save their lives rather than slapping some cuffs on them. So, yeah, and talking about the mechanics of Phil, his starter blue skills, and also that's the thing with these ultimate characters, these legendary characters, they start with 2 blue skills rather than just 1. So I guess that's kind of how we represent that they are, different than your average survivor. They have more experience and all that jazz, right? So he does start with a shotgun, which is kind of cool. I know I've been dunking on Phil this whole time because cop, but like as a character in the game, it's kind of nice to have him around because he does start with a damage 2 ranged weapon, and he also has lifesaver, which does come in handy. Phil can yank people out of an adjacent zone with zombies in it, which means he literally can save their lives if they're about to get like devoured by a horde. Pretty much, Phil can use an action. In fact, I'm not even sure if lifesaver might be one of those free things that you can do once. I'll have to double check on that if I'm about to do that. But anyway, that is Phil. Moving on. We don't want this video to be too long. We don't want it to be too long. Wanda. Wanda is up next. We're going to read her official background. It says, Wanda served burgers and beer at the local retro drive-in. The zombie apocalypse hasn't changed her routine much. She still spends her days dodging grabby hands, scooting around on roller skates, and firmly rejecting inappropriate advances, all for some second-rate food and a few lousy tips. The new chainsaw is a nice perk, though. Okay. So that's the official background, and now we're going to sort of go through some of my personal impressions that I've written down here. First impression, Wanda's my favorite character. She is, for a while now, out of all the Zombicide characters that I've played and have had something to do with, I kind of like Wanda the best. Like, for some reason, she kind of sticks in my head somewhere. I think it's sort of just her vibes. Let me read a bit more. I do love the optics of a sassy waitress lady who likely has a southern accent, zipping around on roller skates and just diving into intense combat with chainsaw and shotgun. That's kind of Wanda in a nutshell. And that's kind of why I like her. Like, she just sort of jumps into stuff. She's like zippy. She's good at melee. There are many a time that I just kind of carved my way across the map with Wanda. People were backing her up too, but she is great at just diving in there and taking a bunch of people out. But okay, next point. crappy low-wage waitress job in which she was likely very dependent upon tips to survive. Okay, we have to expound upon this just a little bit. I think it's important to mention that, like, when it comes to wait staff, especially here in America, we have this weird tipping culture in America that we all just kind of accept. And not many people, much like with the cop thing, not many people are aware that, like, tips aren't just a fun little bonus that your wait staff gets if they did a good job. It's more than just a little head pat, right? Like, the restaurant industry lobbies rather aggressively to continue to be allowed to pay their wait staff less than minimum wage. So let me stress that. Wait staff in America, more often than not, depending upon what state you live in, gets paid less than minimum wage. So the tips are very literally factored into their wages. So, pro tip, do tip your wait staff, please. It shouldn't matter whether you think they did a good job or not. They need to eat. They need to live somewhere. Please tip them. Tip them generously every single time, unless you are aware that you live in a state where the restaurant has to pay them at least a minimum wage, which means they are not dependent upon tips to, like, buy food. Anyway, moving on. The original text mentions creepy guys multiple times. Wanda is a conventionally attractive woman, and what we mean by that is most people would probably agree that, yes, Wanda is attractive, meaning that, like, the society that we live in considers Wanda to be kind of like the ideal way a woman should probably look, right? And she does spend most of her time dressed up in what we would call a fetishized costume, and or like the retro 50s diner dress that she usually wears, and with a probably intentionally short skirt on it. And taking all this into account, I would say that unwanted attention isn't out of place here. It's not weird, right? And particularly if we take into account the highly patriarchal, here's another big word, here's another big lefty word, right? Nature of our society. And to touch on that a bit, we need to talk about hierarchical social structures that we do kind of have, right? These are not like enforced by laws per se, not all the time at least anyway, but when we talk about patriarchy, it basically explains why men not only perceive women to be inherently inferior, but also as sexual objects that should be available to them. In layman's terms, the Me Too movement was definitely very valid in a lot of ways, okay? So, and what we mean here is, in terms of a patriarchy, it tends to be considered that men are this, women are that. Men are the ones that do the things. They're the breadwinner, right? They're the strong one that protects their women, and all of this, right? And in a more traditional patriarchal sort of viewpoint, you don't consider women in the same way that you do men. Like you would think it would be weird if a woman is aggressive, or if she is a good fighter or something like that. You would consider that to be masculine. You would say that woman is weird because she's being too masculine, and we don't like that, or something like that, right? all this to say that like I think it's totally legit that like all sorts of creepy guys were like leering at Wanda. They were sort of hitting on her. They were maybe even trying to like yank up her skirt or touch her legs or something like that. And again, if that happens, it's not just because those individuals are jerks. It's because there's like this societal expectation that like women are kind of sexual objects that should be available to men, right? And or like they are supposed to look cute because they're supposed to look cute for me is what is the way a lot of men see it. And pro tip, guys, you shouldn't, okay? Women are just people. Stop being weird, stop being gross. Just talk to them like you would anybody else, and don't expect them to behave in a particular way. Okay? Like gender is more of a spectrum, not a binary. We're going to move on. I'm just going to leave that there. We don't have the time to dive into these complex concepts here. I just want to explain why, Wanda probably did get, hit on and lots of gross shit happened to her. Right, so Wanda's origin suggests that the onset of the zombie outbreak gave her the opportunity to release a lot of pent-up frustrations about her life, right? So this is why we mentioned her shitty job and the way men tended to treat her. It inspired her to sort of just go wild when the zombie outbreak happened. She, instead of being, terrified and afraid, she's all like, cool, now I get to take these guys out because they're not even alive anymore, right? So, in fact, the fan-made origin mission has her chasing down her jerk of an ex-boss, and oh gosh, there's some interesting stuff in the text for that mission. It says that her ex-boss put cameras in the bathroom so that he could just peep at his female employees, I would imagine. And he made employees pay to use it. Like, what? Like, who does that? Like, you're already at work and you have to pay just to go to the bathroom. I don't even... I can't even. That's so gross. Like, why would you do that? Also, her stalker ex-boyfriend. Her ex-boyfriend was definitely a stalker. He was very weird. He was extremely obsessed with Wanda. And this is some more context for Wanda, right? Like, it's straight up said that her boyfriend just didn't understand the meaning of the word no. And that has some pretty dark implications, right? If we're saying that Wanda would say no to him and he would just keep doing what he was doing, maybe he sexually abused her? I don't know. Anyway, plus basically all zombies, customers within the diner where she worked, right? So Wanda basically goes on a killing spree in this mission. Like, she just... Zombie apocalypse happened, she found some weapons, and she just went for it. Like, she just took a bunch of people out that were making her life kind of a living hell. Now, Wanda's ultimate version is interesting since she seems to have obviously ditched her old waitress outfit, since it probably represents a part of her life that she would rather forget for all the reasons we just talked about, right? She doesn't want to remember her time as a waitress because there's a lot of gross shit. She was being exploited by her boss. She was being abused by all sorts of men, and she kind of hated it, and I don't blame her for it. Now, next point is she is also now dressed a bit more sensibly for combat with some thick cloth armor around her calves and forearms to guard against zombie bites. And that's pretty cool, actually. I liked picking up this miniature when I was about to paint it and looking at it kind of closely and realizing, hey, she's not just wearing a new, different outfit. She doesn't just have, like, jeans and a jean jacket on and stuff like that. She has cloth armor, yo. It's on her like limbs to protect from zombies. So, like I said, a lot of these models are definitely give you like, pro zombie killer vibes. Like they've been doing this for a while, so now they're better at it, right? So, next point. Plus, she still has her roller skates, of course, because they do definitely give her that extra boost of speed that can help her to keep her alive, right? So that's interesting. She did basically everything from her old persona, but she kept the roller skates for very practical reasons, because I guess she got really good at just using them to roll around on and give her that extra boost of speed to just jump into combat and somehow just flawlessly kill zombies while she's still on wheels, pretty much. Anyway, it works for her, right? Stop thinking about whether it makes any sense or not. It works for Wanda. Next point. Wanda's main flaw would probably be that she is likely a bit of a loose cannon and may get herself in trouble by just charging into situations without too much thought. So again, we're going to go back to the mechanics here. Ultimate Wanda, she does have sprint like she usually does, but she also starts the game with Bloodlust Melee, which is pretty cool. That does mean that by default she is zippy, and she's like pretty damn good at like just charging in there and getting a bunch of extra attacks just by default from the very beginning without leveling up at all. So that's pretty freaking cool. Now I wrote an extra little note here with regards to Phil. Wanda kind of hates Phil because he is a creepy dude, likely because cop. And cops have a tendency to do domestic abuse. Now, let me expound on that just a little bit. With beyond everything else I already said about cops, and y'all can look this up if you want to. Cops have, let's say, disproportionate amount, I should say, of cops tend to be found guilty of domestic violence, domestic abuse. And this kind of tracks when you consider that part about how like cops just kind of do stuff. Like they are allowed to put their hands on people, even shoot them, lie to them. Like they are given free rein to enforce the law. And it would just be naive to think that they don't just carry that attitude right into their like, civilian life, their home life, right? They may very well end up treating their spouse much like they do the sort of quote-unquote scumbags they usually go after and whatnot. So anyway, no, Wanda is not on Team Phil. She does not like Phil. All right, so moving on. So this video is not too long. We're moving on. Next up is Ned. This is Ned. Ned... official background starts with a bit of dialogue. Just add a bit of bleach and bang. That's something Ned would say, apparently. I guess he makes bombs sometimes with bleach. Okay. The rest says Ned knew it. He knew this would happen. This is their fault. He said so over and over, but nobody ever listened. Boy, are they sorry now. Ned was preparing for years, collecting food and weapons, building a bunker, all to survive this. Unfortunately for Ned, he's lost his bunker key. Until he finds it, he's going to need every survival skill he's got. And he'll probably need other people too. Alright, so that's what's officially been written about Ned, and now I'm going to move into sort of my personal impressions so that we can so that we can flesh this character out a bit and sort of get under the hood and understand Ned just a little bit better here. So first point, Ned very clearly represents the typical American prepper and or someone who is convinced that society is on the verge of collapse. So they prep for that by gathering as many supplies as they can in some sort of secure location to wait out the end of the world. Now, I don't know if this is just a uniquely American phenomenon, Let me know in the comments if anybody is not American and you have preppers there too. But oh boy, as far as I understand, there is quite the prepper community here in America. And I'm sure that's not a sign of anything. It's probably fine. Just don't worry about it. Next point. Ned is also called crazy, which, if I'm brutally honest, is something of an ableist slur. Okay, so here's another lefty term that I might want to explain a little bit, okay? Odds are you have never heard the term ableist before, unless, you are a leftist. Okay? Unfortunately, I don't think ableism is really discussed very much at all. Definitely not in our mainstream culture, especially here in America. Like, we don't talk about the kind of unique bigotry that disabled people will face. And I can, actually, I mean, I may not be a woman, so I can't really talk to personal experience about the way men tend to treat women, but oh boy, I do have ADHD. And I can tell you, like, even if you don't tell people that you've got some type of learning disability or something like that, like, you will get funny looks. You will get treated a bit differently when you sort of behave outside of the norm. And this tends to be where we get terms like crazy, right? We apply crazy to people that are acting odd, and normally this means we can ignore them. We shouldn't listen to them. They aren't useful. And hopefully we're seeing why this can be bad. We're seeing how this can go to a very dark place when we start to just consider entire portions of the population to just be kind of useless and that we shouldn't listen to, right? So that's not great. Maybe look into ableism a little bit, what that is, and try not to just call somebody crazy, because you probably shouldn't. You shouldn't just call people crazy. That's not great. Next point. Let's move on. General impression about preppers is they are weirdo conspiracy theorists living on the fringe of society because they are weirdos. So, like I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, preppers are a thing, and the general impression is, yeah, they're just weird. Whatever. Who cares? They're preppers. They're kind of crazy. Wow, preppers are crazy. And I don't know, like, if you're thinking critically, you might want to wonder, where are all these preppers coming from? Why are people doing this? Why are they stockpiling supplies? Why do so many people think that the world is about to end? Maybe there's something to that. I don't know. Maybe instead of just calling them weird, we should try to understand why this phenomenon is occurring. Okay? So, anyway. And yeah, next point is, I would say it's becoming less weird every day to believe that our world is heading for disaster and ruin. But of course, most people would rather not think that way. 'Cause why would they? Right? Maybe that's our answer there, right? Maybe we're all just trying not to think about it. Maybe we see the preppers and we just want to call them crazy because we don't want to think that maybe they're onto something, that maybe they're right, that maybe everything's about to go south, right? So anyway, back to Ned. The other things we learn about him is that he's lost the keys to his bunker, and that would explain why he isn't just waiting there during the outbreak. So this is just plain old storytelling, right? We kind of have to provide a reason for why Ned is even here. Why is he here in this town with these people when we've already established that he's a prepper and that he has a big old, bunker that he built? He built a bunker and filled it with all kinds of stuff for years, so why the hell isn't he there? Well, apparently he lost the key, so he can't even get inside of it anymore. So that, and that's got to be really frustrating, right? Putting years and years and years into something, and all of a sudden it's just gone. Now, fun fact: this video is actually my second attempt to shoot this. I tried using OBS, and I guess I mentioned this because once I was finally done, I noticed that the video just kind of stopped recording at a certain point. It just kind of froze, so I sort of had to toss all of that out. That was 2 hours of work, and then I had to spend a decent amount of time, like, sort of troubleshooting why that would happen, and maybe coming up with a different solution. So, oh gosh, I can only imagine what it would be like to lose years of work, especially when, like, the world actually did end, and now you don't get to reap the benefits of any of that stuff that you did. Okay, moving on. It also mentioned that Ned is at least a little antisocial, which would make sense since he did intend to live by himself in a bunker for who knows how long because he was convinced the world around him was crumbling. Okay, so I guess it's important to mention this because it's probably fair to say that Ned just doesn't want to be here. He'd rather be back in his bunker. He kind of has to deal with these people to stay alive. And I don't think it's out of place to say that, like, maybe not everybody hates him like they kind of secretly hate Phil, but I bet you anything they think Ned is a little weird. They think Ned is a bit of an oddball. They maybe try to keep one eye on Ned because they're not sure what he's going to do next, perhaps. I don't know. Next point. Ned is clearly good at scavenging, and this is likely due to his background as a prepper, right? Because remember, he had been gathering supplies for years. He had been planning obsessively about how to survive on his own when the world dies. So he may not have access to his giant stash of loot, but this man knows how to get some more. He knows what he needs. He knows how to survive. He just needs to get his hands on some of that stuff again, right? And he's pretty good at doing that. So mechanics-wise, Ned does have a +1 free search action, and he does have scavenger. And this basically means Ned is always going to be able to search. No matter what is going on in the turn, Ned can do a search action. Period. Even if he is outside in the street, scavenger means he can search in the street, which is kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Final point is I also see that not much has changed between his original and ultimate versions. He just has a slightly different outfit, but he still has the same weapons and smiley face pin, which may just be a Watchmen reference to the comedian character, who was also more than a little eccentric. Okay, so we mention this because, yes, if you look at Ned's artwork, he does have a little smiley face pin on, and there even is a little bit of blood on it, which I do kind of think is a Watchmen reference. And suffice it to say, this is basically implying, once again, that Ned's a little off. Ned's a little weird. He's a bit of an oddball. He's eccentric. You're not quite sure what he's going to do next. So that is Ned in a nutshell, I suppose. All right, 3 more to go. Next one is Amy. Okay. Here's Amy. She's down here, right? Official background starts with some dialogue. I shouldn't have to explain why we need to loot the makeup store. And this is a bit revealing. It's initially, we would think, this is some funny, haha dialogue. Oh, Amy, that's so quirky. But it kind of tells us something about her relationship to her goth identity, and we're gonna get into this in a bit. The text says Amy was a goth girl who hated everything, from mindless consumerism to the pointlessness of daily existence. The world Amy despised so much has crumbled, and from the rubble comes the promise of a fresh start and simpler times. Desperate zombie battles have sparked a will to live in Amy and finally given her something to care about. But she still doesn't feel comfortable without some white foundation on. Okay, so again with the makeup, again with her need to identify as a goth. And that is very interesting. We'll get into it right now. We transition to personal impressions here. So first point, Amy's description is a very apt one, I think. So unlike with Phil, I kind of think this one is spot on. I think they kind of nailed this one. I don't have to question it. And next point is, I don't know a lot about the goth subculture, but I do know that it's at least loosely connected to the punk scene. Okay, so yeah, I don't know an awful lot about goths, but I do know a thing or two about punks. And I did hear someone talking about goths and saying that, yeah, it's kind of an extension of the punk scene. So, and here's another bit of fun fact trivia for you. There are Nazi punks, right? Nazi punks are a thing that like exist, and it's kind of funny because the majority of the punk scene, as you might imagine, hates the Nazi punks. Who really likes Nazis, right? But y'all can look this up. There is a song called Nazi Punks Fuck Off. Someone wrote that song and they sang it and people loved it because, yes, Nazi punks can fuck off. Moving on. The original text tells us that Amy hated mindless consumerism and the pointlessness of daily existence. This very much, to me at least, hints at the heavy anti-capitalist and anti-authority themes within the broader punk slash goth subculture. And more importantly, it tells us that Amy very much agreed with that culture. There was a reason this goth persona is so important to her. She was sort of dipping out from mainstream society because she thought it was just, there was something deeply troubling and wrong about it. Okay, so next point, it also mentions that Amy doesn't want to abandon her goth persona even after the world has ended. I kind of just said that. And it must be a little bit harder to find and apply makeup now. Okay, so we get back to the makeup. I do think it's interesting that, like, the world has ended, we're in a zombie apocalypse, and Amy is the kind of person that is willing to risk her life for some makeup so that she can still look like a goth. That should tell you something right there. That should tell you something about her relationship with this persona. That she's willing to risk her life for some more makeup so that she can still sort of have that very pale complexion and some black lipstick or something like that. It's interesting. So the next point is, this indicates to me that someone like Amy would utterly despise someone like Phil. Okay, so number 2, we have second person here that is not in the Phil fan club very explicitly. Phil likely reminds her of the old world system of capital that she hated so thoroughly. Amy is very likely an anarchist, which makes her super cool in my book. Okay, so several things to mention here. As I said, group dynamics. We already see that we've got at least a couple people that don't just kind of dislike Phil. They really sort of hate him, and they have some fairly good reasons to. And what's interesting is it's not even so much like Phil as a person. It's more like what Phil represents to them. Like for Amy, all she needs to know is he's still dressed like a cop. He still acts like a cop. So Phil's mere existence reminds her of everything she hated about the old world. Now the way Phil behaves is what Wanda kinda hates, but Point is, yeah, we have something of a rift here in the group. And yeah, anarchists are cool. I kind of am one. That's sort of where the name for the channel comes from. Direct action gaming, and especially the little logo. There's some more fun trivia for you. I chose red and black dice because those are kind of the anarchist colors. So there you go. Now you learned something. Moving on. According to a fan-made origin story, Amy got her signature samurai sword from her sensei, whom she had to kill once he turned. Okay, so this tells us several things. That, like, Amy actually did legit used to be into martial arts, probably Aikido, or maybe Kendo or something of that nature, but the sword that we usually see her with is not just some random sword that she picked up because she needed to defend herself. She got that from her sensei that she kind of had to murder because he turned, right? So that is a thing that apparently happened. Now, in her ultimate version, we can see that, like Wanda, she has ditched her old attire for something a bit more sensible that will provide some extra protection. But she still has her goth makeup and wristbands, so her old persona is still very much on display. Now, original Amy had this sort of schoolgirl outfit on, and so I guess it was like a Hot Topic sort of thing. Maybe she was, I don't know, dressing like that in an ironic fashion or something. Like, I guess goth people do that. Like I said, I'm sorry, I don't know much about goths. Correct me in the comments if you feel a need to. Moving on. What's also interesting is if we compare her skill lists, we can see that her original version gets the medic skill once she's fully leveled and or once she gets to red. Whereas her ultimate version gets the medic skill right off the bat. This seems to mean that Amy knew something about Amy knew nothing about medical stuff until after the outbreak forced her to learn, as she needed to bandage wounds to keep everyone in the fight. So that's kind of cool, I think. That, like, original Amy doesn't get medic until you level her up an awful lot. Ultimate Amy just already has that. She already learned how to do that, so she just knows how to, like, heal people right off the bat. And that is dope because medic is, like, y'all are probably gonna see it's kind of an OP skill. It's kind of dope. I like it. So moving on, final point, Amy's signature skill is a slightly faster movement speed. Since she can always get one free extra move action, this is likely due to her martial arts background. Okay, so what this kind of means is Amy is the real zippy one. If Wanda doesn't have her... Oh, gosh. Someone was calling me. Sorry, y'all. I'm a little frustrated because it's been taking me a very long time just to film this first episode in a series of episodes, and I wanted to get all of them done like today. Anyhow, moving on. Amy is the real zippy one because she doesn't need roller skates to move a little bit faster. She always moves a little bit faster all the time. And that's kind of cool because no matter how much she shoots or how much she chops, she can always move at least one space. That almost certainly comes in handy. Moving on, we got two more to go. We're almost done, y'all. All right, so official background for Doug. It starts with a bit of dialogue. On the plus side, no more TPS reports. Once again, haha, funny, very quirky. But it also reveals something. And we're going to get into that in a bit. We're going to expound upon this. 4-hour commutes, 12-hour days, uncooperative colleagues, and unappreciative bosses are a thing of the past for Doug. Sure, dealing with zombies is a little stressful, but quite frankly, he still finds them a pleasant change from his previous daily grind. Oh my goodness. It gets better, though. He feels sure that an Uzi in each hand would have greatly simplified staff meetings. Well, what do you mean by that, Doug? They certainly help in dealing with troublesome ex-colleagues and ex-bosses, most of whom Doug is pretty sure are zombies. Oh my goodness. There really is a lot to unpack there, isn't there? Let's get into it. Here's my personal impressions. First point. Once again, we can learn a lot from Doug's initial description. Oh boy. Next point. First of all, he is almost certainly inspired by William D. Fenn's Foster, played by Michael Douglas in the movie Falling Down. If y'all haven't seen that yet, you probably should. I kind of recommend it. It's sort of a cult classic for a reason. We'll get into that in just a bit. But yes, Falling Down. Doug is kind of modeled after the Falling Down guy. Doug is also an office worker who has clearly snapped due to the stress of his old job because, oh gosh, 16-hour work days. Remember? 4-hour commute, which technically isn't working, but like that's 4 hours out of his day, pretty much guaranteed, just to get to work and to go back home from work, and then a 12-hour work day. And if that's just his typical day, he's pulling 16-hour days at least 5 days a week. Is it any wonder someone like this just snaps? Especially when you consider that, like, it's straight up already said. The company he was working for, he wasn't having a great time there. His bosses, his colleagues, they all kind of just dunked on him, and it wasn't great, and he hated it, and he had to spend damn near all his time there. I would imagine, like, if you're working 16-hour days, you go home, you get a bit of sleep, you get back up, you gobble something down, and you go right back to work. Like, you don't have a lot of free time. So that's not great. Next point, this might mean he went on something of a killing spree at his old office once the outbreak began, and that not everyone he shot had actually turned. A fan-made origin story does indeed have him fighting his way out of his old office. Okay, so remember, in the description, it says that Doug is pretty sure that all the troublesome ex-colleagues and ex-bosses that he shot were zombies. So this might mean that he killed people that hadn't turned yet. Right? I already mentioned that. That's interesting. All right, so next point. The character that is Doug attempts to show us a similar picture of the modern-day corporate environment being a remarkably unhealthy place that can certainly have a toll on someone's mental health. And what I really mean here is the character of Doug is sort of doing the same thing that the Falling Down movie did. It's sort of trying to illustrate that the modern office worker is subject to an awful lot of stress, very long working hours, and that tends to have an effect over time. In Doug's case, he kinda sorta snapped when everything went south and just started shooting a bunch of people. That is a thing that happened. So his ultimate version also shows us that, like Wanda, he has ditched his old office attire, very likely because he'd rather forget that older part of his life. He now wears paramilitary gear, which is fitting since his skill set is all about carrying lots of gear while also having a knack for dual-wielding weapons. And yes, back to the mechanics once again. Doug starts with matching set and horde. He starts with both of those skills because ultimate survivors start with 2 skills at blue. Horde allows him to basically put 2 extra things in his backpack. Matching set means that, like, if Doug finds a thing, such as the pistol that he's starting with, and it has the little, like, dual wield logo on it, Doug is able to sort of dip into the equipment deck and just sort of grab the matching card for, he can get another pistol if he finds a pistol, basically, so that he can dual wield. Doug likes to dual wield. He's pretty good at it. Final point. He still seems to have his old glasses on, but his hair seems a bit grayer, noting the passage of time. Because once again, these are the ultimate versions of these characters. They've been around the block a few times. They have seen some things. Some stuff has happened to them, right? So, moving on. Final character. We're almost done here, y'all. Josh. Official background. Starts with some dialogue. I don't want your money. What am I supposed to do with it? Yet another revealing phrase that we start with. Let's read some more. Josh grew up poor in a tough neighborhood and turned to simple street crime just to get by. It was all he could do to survive day to day before the zombies. Now there's no more law, and no one can tell him what to do, except for Phil, because he tries to do that. But maybe Josh usually tells him to just, get bent. I don't know. Josh has found his street smarts in high demand by other survivors. Respect, he finds, is worth more than all the money in the world. Now that's nice. That's interesting. Personal impressions. So first of all, Josh is clearly another character that would despise Phil, for all the reasons we just saw in the text. Right? He was a street kid. He was getting arrested a lot. We're going to get into that. Next point. Someone like Phil very clearly was the bane of Josh's existence as he grew up on the streets. Because cops were antagonizing him as he was doing what he felt he needed to do to survive. Cops were always stopping him from trying to do that. Next point. Most might call Josh a thug and or a scumbag, or at least someone like Phil probably would, right? You don't become a cop if you sympathize with criminal behavior. You become a cop because you assume someone who has done a crime is a bad person, because laws are fair and good and we need to uphold them. That's why you become a cop, right? So, next point. Yet the description we have is rather humanizing, since it points out that if Josh stole, it was only out of necessity due to the crippling poverty he had to endure, right? So, a great example people usually give is, hey, if you're starving and you steal an apple, is that really stealing? Because you need to eat? Are you stealing when you take food because you're starving? That's an interesting question, right? Y'all might want to think about that if you haven't. Next point, we also see that Josh is another survivor that doesn't seem to miss the old world very much, and I can't say I blame him. At least in this world, he isn't constantly being thrown in prison by someone like Phil, right? So here we can talk a little bit more about the other aspect of policing. We can talk about broken windows policing. That is just one thing that y'all might look up if you want to know a little bit more about what police really get up to, especially in like the poor working class neighborhoods where it is clear that due to various policies that are being set by administrative officials, like cops kind of have to behave differently in some neighborhoods as compared to like the fancy upper class neighborhoods. Their cops are not going to treat the rich people the way they do the poors, basically. Next point, there isn't much of a difference between original Josh and his ultimate version. He just has a bit more protective gear, and or a leather jacket. Basically, he has a leather jacket on. He's got a belt that he probably shoves a bunch of ammo on. He's got a knee pad. That's pretty much it. He just has a jacket and a knee pad, pretty much. Yeah. Oh gosh, where the heck was I? Right, some sort of wound at his knee. That's the other difference. Josh's knee is wounded. Maybe a gunshot. Maybe a scratch from a zombie, and or like He was trying to climb on something and he messed up his knee. Who knows? An interesting side note is that his hoodie bears the Guillotine Games logo, so the devs seem to be getting some free advertising from Josh. And yes, if you go to Zombicide.com and try to go to Josh, you can see that in his original version, instead of a leather jacket, he just has a hoodie and it's got like a big old guillotine on it, which is like the developers of Zombicide. Guillotine Games. They're one of their first character sets. They just put their logo right on one of their sweaters. So that's an interesting side note. Josh's skill set seems to be all about his street kid upbringing. He's very agile and good at getting himself out of dangerous situations. Boom. Yeah, I'm just once again testing to make sure that the camera is working. I'm a little paranoid about that. Okay, so yeah, game mechanics. Josh starts with slippery and jump. So both of these skills combined, they do make it so that he can potentially move a little bit faster. Pretty much the way jump works is if there is a straight line that Josh can move in, like down the street like this, and there's nothing like impeding him, he can move 2 spaces in one action. And furthermore, he can literally jump over obstacles in one space and be in the opposite space. And of course, slippery means that he could ignore movement restrictions when moving through a crowd of zombies. So Josh is pretty good at getting around the maps in such a way that the zombies can't really stop him in the same way they would stop the other characters. Okay, so that took a little while, but we are done. We are done setting the scene when it comes to the characters, at least anyway. We've fleshed them out a bit. We know a little bit more about them. We know that at least half the team really kind of hates Phil because he's kind of a dick, and we learned all sorts of other things too about these 6 people here, right? So what we're going to do now is take the models off the player boards and put them in the center of the map. That is where the survivors start on this mission. Okay. And I don't know if y'all noticed, I decided to put like a gold trim on these bases to sort of like make it clear if I used like a mixed team that the characters with the gold trim are ultimate survivors, and therefore they get an extra skill. They're a little bit special. But anyway, here they are in the starting position, and we're going to talk just a little bit about the situation at hand and the world that they are in and how I have tweaked it just a little bit, okay? So for the most part, I figured, okay, so if we've got these ultimate versions here, and they are veterans of the zombie apocalypse, they've been doing stuff for a while, that means time has passed, and the world is a little bit more dangerous now, right? So what I've changed is I added 1 additional spawn zone up there, so that will give us some more zombies to deal with. I've also changed the dark zone rules a bit, and/or every room is a dark zone now. And I kind of figured that might be neat because and makes sense because it, obviously we're dealing with crumbling infrastructure. There is no more electricity. If we're like a year in, there are no more power plants. Why would any rooms be lit up unless you've got like a generator hooked up or something like that? If these people are just rolling into some random town, all the buildings are going to be dark as heck. And what this means is zombies will spawn in every single room, not just the obvious dark zones. And if we apply dark zone rules, guns are basically useless inside buildings. We will only hit on a 6 if we are shooting into a building zone, right? Okay, so there's that. On top of all that, I've decided to apply a slight tweak to the way doors work. Normally in second edition, all you need is door busting equipment to be able to, well, bust doors. So Amy has a fire axe and Josh has a crowbar. They are breachers for the moment. They are actually able to open doors. But normally, you just need to have that thing equipped for it to work, for you to be able to open doors. But I'm going to say that, like, in addition to needing door busting equipment, we also kind of need to succeed a roll of 4 or more. We're going to have to roll to be able to open doors. And I think that's appropriate because, well, in the late stages of the apocalypse, we would probably be encountering a lot of barricaded doors and a lot of foliage, shall we say, all over the place. A lot of vines and all that jazz. If you ever seen Last of Us 2 or something like that, you probably know what I'm getting at. There's going to be lots of vegetation all over the place, shall we say. So it will be more challenging to open these doors now, since maybe you might even have a hard time finding the damn thing. You might not even be able to see it because it's just covered in vegetation and it just looks like part of the wall or something like that, right? So okay, so there's that, and we're actually going to be using noise tokens this time because I kind of figure it's going to be important to know exactly where the noisiest zone on the map actually is, considering we're possibly going to have to spend additional actions to open doors here, right? So, plus it'll just make the game a little more interesting, a little more immersive, to know exactly what the effects of our actions are in terms of how much noise is being produced. So, plus, it makes things a little bit more tactical in a sense. Like, it's possible we can have a survivor intentionally make a lot of noise in a place and then, just move somewhere else so the zombies go somewhere where nobody is. Maybe. But anyway, one final tweak is, well, there's a couple, really. One for the survivors is we're going to be using campaign KO rules, and basically that means if a survivor such as Ned were to go down because he's lost all of his wounds, instead of immediately losing the game, we just do this. We put Ned on his side. The model is on its side, and we say that, like, Ned will bleed out in one turn. So another survivor has to, like, get to the zone and use an action to pick Ned up as if he was like an objective crate. So once Ned gets picked up in this way, he is then removed from the game. And sure, he hasn't bled out and died because Josh saved him, but Ned is out of action for the rest of the mission because he done got messed up. So that will make the game both a little easier and also a little harder because maybe we're going to have to carry on with less than 6 survivors. We might get down to 4 or even 3. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Right? Okay, so there's that, and there's just the spawn deck itself. I did a bit of tweaking there. Pretty much I got rid of all the core regular zombies from 2nd edition, and we now have nothing but special first edition zombies. And by that I mean we've got Skinners, we've got toxic zombies, and we've got berserker zombies. And we'll talk a little bit about how all those zombies are special when they show up. But for the most part, I figured this would not only make things a little bit more challenging and a little bit more interesting, it also makes it a bit more thematic. Because like the Skinners basically are supposed to represent zombies that have legitimately been around for a while, and now they're starting to decay a little bit. They're starting to fall apart, and it's it's actually harder to kill Skinners because of this. Like, if you try to kill them, sometimes you don't actually kill them. You just knock out their legs, and now they're a crawler. And we're going to see how that works. But for the most part, yeah, we've got those three types of zombies, and we've got the crows over here. So crows are going to be making an appearance finally on the channel here. We're going to see how they work. And we got a full box of abominations here. We've got a whole bunch of different abominations. So if an abomination shows up, well, who knows what it's going to be. Okay, so anyway, yes, now it is finally time. Just testing the camera again. Finally time to get started, right? Okay, so our survivors have just rolled into town. As we can see, it is very empty. It is very quiet. They don't see any zombies anywhere, nor do they hear them, but they are all experienced enough to know that just because they don't hear or see zombies doesn't mean that they aren't around somewhere. There are definitely zombies inside of all of these buildings, and they will need to breach all of these buildings because an objective here to win this game is to get all the boxes. We need to get all the epic weapon crates. We need to get all the objective crates. And furthermore, we do need to also find a Molotov. The survivors must have all Molotov after getting all of the crates in order to win this game. So it is a loot run. It's a fairly simple loot run. I've decided to call it Playing with Fire, partially because of the Molotov, but also because maybe we're in over our heads here. Who knows? Because this is the first time I've attempted to tweak the rules, so I'm not really sure how this is going to play out with the way I've tweaked the rules. Maybe things get a little too crazy here. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But we are playing with fire. This is the beginning of our tale. Things are very quiet now, but we know they won't be forever. So to start with, Phil is going to order Amy to bash open this door. He just points at it and says, "Hey, Amy, go on over there and bash it open with your fire axe." And grudgingly, Amy does so. She kind of hates the way Phil orders her around, but she knows that this is something that needs to happen anyway. She knows that they're here to get some much needed supplies, so she figures this door is as good as any. So she wanders over here. She does get a free action, remember, so she still has her full 3 actions. So we're going to start with her first attempt at busting this door open. She needs a 4 or more. And she gets a 6, so it is a critical success. She has no problems whatsoever. Boom. Door gets busted open, and it is gonzo. Okay. So that was her first action. We have to place down a noise token because the fire axe does make noise when you attempt to bust a door with it. So there is that. Yeah. Normally it's quiet, but when you're using it to bust open a door, it's kinda loud. We're going to spawn for all these spaces in the big building here, and we are going for the big building first because here's where the most spaces are, and we're still in blue, so maybe we help ourselves out a little bit here by spawning all this stuff right now, and we'll have probably, hopefully, less stuff to deal with. Anyway, first spawn. Let's see. 4 Skinner Walkers. Okay. 4 Skinner Walkers. Alright, and we already explained the Skinners a little bit. I'll show you exactly how that works when we engage some in combat. But for the most part, like, Skinners can potentially become crawlers. You may need to hit them twice to take them down. So we spawn there first, and then we're going to make our way back here to this room that is right in front of Amy. All right, so way in the back, we've got 4 Skinner Walkers that are shuffling around. What is the next spawn? The next spawn is 3 more Skinner Walkers. Okay, Got 3 more Skinner walkers in the next room. 1, 2, and 3. All right. That is the next spawn. Okay. After that is, hey, a Toxic Brute Rush. Something a little different here. Okay, so we're gonna find Toxics. Here's a Brute, and the Brute is here because the Brute rushed. Okay. Long and short of it, for Toxics, you want to engage them from a distance. Basically, they will pop, and there will be toxic goo splashing all over the place. Basically, if survivors engage them in close combat, like even if they're using a ranged weapon, if you kill a toxic in the same zone, you get the blood spray effect, and that means you take 1 wound for taking that toxic out. And this can really be a problem if you've got a lot of toxics in your zone and you kind of need to take them all out. Like, that could end the game for a survivor if they get swamped by too many toxics. And this is where Phil's lifesaver is probably going to come in handy. He might be able to yank somebody out of a group of toxics. That could happen. All right, 2 more spawns. What's happening next? Oh my gosh, I forgot something. I forgot to set the timer, because we are going to do this in an episodic fashion like usual. This is going to be yet another session. We had a long start here, but let's see. We're just going to set the timer for 25 minutes, I guess. We're going to keep gaming for 25 more minutes and see how much we can accomplish. Okay, so next spawn, Berserker Walkers. We got 1 of them. Okay. And that would be in this space that the Toxic Brute rushed into. So now I guess I get to explain Berserkers. There's not much to them. It's just that they've got this like weird chitinous bone armor, and you can't shoot them. Ranged attacks are they are immune from that. Other than like you can hit them with a car apparently, and you can kill them with a Molotov. Other than that, guns do nothing to them. So there's that. Yeah, you have to do melee to Berserkers. That's mainly what it is. Also, Berserkers are from the Prison Outbreak set, so they are very thematic zombies. They're all either prisoners and or prison guards. So there's that too. And I also painted pretty much all of their skin like the same color, because like if you look at the artwork, it kind of looks like their original skin has been replaced by this sort of bone-like armor. So I went for like a sort of beige-ish like color. But anyway, moving on. The final spawn is going to be 1 flock of crows. There is 1 flock of crows directly in front of Amy here. Okay, so Amy has 2 actions left. She could either move inside and try to smack those crows, or she could flip around and try to attack the door below her. And that's appealing to me. I think we might have her kill 2 birds with 1 stone. She's going to go after the door below her as well, and we're also going to spawn that building too. So she needs a 4 or more, and this is going to create a little bit more noise in the space. What does she get? She does get a 4. Okay, so she does open the door, and we get another noise token here. She did her free move and 2 opens. All right. So now she has one action left, and we need to see what spawns in here. 2 more spawns. We've got 2 Skinner Brutes. Okay, 1, 2 that are way down here in this room. Okay. And then, let's see here. Final spawn is 1 more flock of crows. Okay. It's going to be right here. Okay. So Amy has 1 more move. How do we play this? We might have a couple of people move down here and just everybody else move up there, perhaps. So, final action, Amy will move up here. That's her final action. That's all she has. So she's there now. And who should go next? We have activated Amy. We can almost certainly activate Wanda. We might as well activate Wanda and decide. I think Wanda is going to decide to be with Amy. She's going to go up to be there with Amy. She gets bloodlust melee, and this basically means she can move 2 spaces, 1, 2, to a space where enemies are, and then she gets to attack in the same motion, right? So she's going to be able to roll for her baseball bat. Wanda just rolls into the room and says, what does she say? See, this is what I mean by I need to get practice at this. I need to get practice at just sort of improvising some character dialogue and describing the scene and all that jazz. Wanda has a bat. She's gonna swing it. She says, "Swing, better swing." That's what she says. Boom. We need 2. We need 3 or more. And boom, she takes those crows out like big time. So we have activated Wanda. She gets 1 point for taking out the crows. Okay. So I think she's going to spend her final 2 actions because she did Bloodlust melee. Now she can also search and grab that epic weapon. So we're going to say she grabs the epic weapon first. And then we're going to go to the deck here, and I'm going to close my eyes and sort of try to grab one at random to see which thing Wanda gets. Well, Wanda gets a zombie in her face. That's what she gets. Okay. And since we're not using normal walkers, we're considering Skinner walkers to be the normal zombies here. So we place a Skinner walker here, and I guess Wanda is going to have to try to kill it now. She's going to have to do another melee as her final action rather than searching. And that epic weapon crate was also a bust. That kind of sucks. That means we don't get anything from that epic weapon crate. There's only 3 more potential epic weapons here. And Wanda misses both times, too. Oh, gosh. That means somebody is taking a wound here, unless somebody else moves in and does something. Right? So, let's see. Could be Josh. Could be Josh. Let me just double check real quick. How does jump work? Again. The survivor can use this skill once during each of their turns. The survivor spends 1 action and moves 2 zones. Ignore everything in the intervening zone except walls and doors. Movement related skills. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't even say like it has to be a straight line or something like that. It just straight up says you can spend one action and move 2 zones, and you can ignore everything in the intervening zone except walls and closed doors. Which kind of means uh, Josh cannot jump into a building without opening a door, but other than that, he can move 2 zones in one action, and he can also kind of ignore uh, mobs of zombies in the intervening zone. So anything other than walls and or closed doors, right? So, yeah, we can say that Josh jumps into the building here to help these ladies. He sees they're in a bit of a pickle, so he jumps in here and he takes his crowbar and is gonna try to whack at this Skinner Walker, because Wanda missed. She missed several times. Josh hears the commotion. He leaps into the fray. He gets to do 2 melees here because he jumped. And, oh, that's a critical fail. Okay, so that's nothing. Josh misses as well with his crowbar. Josh has one more chance to take the Skinner Walker down. He misses again. Okay. I guess we're going to see Amy's skill, I believe. Because, let me see, medic. This skill is used for free during each end phase. The survivor and all other survivors standing in the same zone may heal 1 wound. The survivor earns 1 AP for each wound healed this way. So, this little group is going to take 1 wound from this Skinner Walker, but since Amy is here, that wound is basically canceled out and almost immediately healed, and Amy even gets 1 AP for doing that. So this is not terrible, basically. But moving on, we're just gonna say everybody else moves down here for now. All these guys move down here. These people have not generated any noise because they didn't do any shooting. It was nothing but melee up here. So, yeah, that's 3. That's 2. Let's see. We're going to have Phil. Phil can move 1, 2, and shoot once. So, I kind of think we'll move maybe Doug and Ned in first with their pistols. They'll try to deal with these crows here. So, Ned first. 1, 2. He also gets a free search. We're just going to say Ned pulls something from somewhere. What is it? It's plenty of bullets. Okay. Ned gets plenty of bullets. Get used to that. I'm really paranoid. I'm just going to keep checking that the camera is working. Ned gets plenty of bullets. He does get to do 1 ranged attack now on these crows. So he will hit on a 3 or more with his pistol. Does he take him out? Ned aims. And he hits him. Just barely, but he takes out the crows with his pistol. They are gone now. Ned gets 1 point. Okay. Cool. Let's see here. I guess Doug... 1, 2. Doug will have to grab something. He can't shoot at these brutes because he doesn't have damage to anything. So with that in mind, he moves and let's have him grab the epic weapon crate. Maybe he can get a damage to thing out of this. Alright. So let's see what Doug can get by pulling this epic weapon crate. He gets the evil twins. Okay. So this means that Doug can actually dual wield pistols in one slot and carry something else in another slot, which is kinda dope. So that's what he gets. That's Doug's turn. All right, so we're gonna take Phil. 1, 2, and he gets precisely one shot with his shotgun. He rolls in there to help these boys out because he hears some rustling deeper into the building, and it's a couple of brutes. Now he's only going to hit on a 6, and this is going to generate some noise. So that will make this the noisiest zone on the map then. Keep that in mind. Alright, so does he get a 4 or more? That's what he's going to need. He gets 2 hits. So he does take... Wait, no. Sorry. He would normally get 2 hits. Dark Zone rules apply. He gets no 6s, therefore the brutes are fine. He only sees the shadowy outlines of some things in the other room, and he tries to blast them, but they're still moving. Nothing happens to him. Okay, so that's what happens there. So now we gotta do the zombie turn, and the brutes move into this zone with these other guys. Somebody takes a wound. It might as well be... Who charged in here first? Let's say it was Wanda. Yeah, Wanda takes a wound because she was the one that triggered the surprise zombie, I guess. So she takes a wound for now, and the brute and this walker move into the zone as well. So now we got 3 zombies in the zone with this other group. And... let's see. We're going to move these other walkers. These walkers move forward here. They shuffle further towards the ruckus in this other room here, as do these other walkers. They shuffle into this little store to get closer to the noises that they hear. Because they're zombies. They hear something, they go, ooh, and move towards it. That's how zombies work. You know that, right? Anyway. So, what do we spawn here? Because that was the movement in the zombie phase, but now we got to do some spawning. We start here, and we move clockwise. We're doing 4 spawns. First spawn is... nothing. It would have been a Skinner Brute Rush, but we're still at blue, so it's actually 0. So nothing spawns here. What is the next spawn? It's Skinner Walker Rush, and it's 2. So there are 2 Skinner Walkers that spawn and move forward 1 space. They too are shuffling closer to the noises that they are hearing over yonder. You know, because Phil blasted his shotgun. I'm sure a lot of dead people heard that. Next spawn is 3 toxic walkers. Okay. So 1, 2, and 3. We're going to put them way up here. So they're going to have to go all the way around this building to get to anybody. But they are up there for now. Final spawn is... all Skinner Walkers... well, wait, no. This would have been an extra activation for Skinner Walkers, but it says on blue, nothing happens. So that's kind of cool. That means these don't move a little bit further ahead, nor do these, and we don't take yet another extra wound in there. So that was a close one. And it also means nothing spawns here. Okay, so... just checking. I'm so paranoid. Okay, but this seems to be working so far. Yeah. So we are now in the end phase. Zombies and players move. So all we do is we clean up these noise tokens. They go away. We don't need them anymore. And we also say that Wanda gets her wound healed because Amy, I guess, very quickly patches it up, which is kind of impressive since they're currently in a very dark room with 3 other zombies. So Amy does get 1 adrenaline point for doing that because she healed 1 wound, and that's medic. So that's what I was talking about. Medic is actually a very handy thing to have. Okay, so that was the first turn. We got a few more minutes, so we're going to do 1 more turn, and then we're gonna wrap it on up. I'm gonna stop this timer. We're gonna do 1 more turn, and then we're gonna wrap it up like usual. Okay, so how do we start? We might as well start with these guys down here because we want to take these brutes out. I guess the only way we can do it for now is with Phil. Phil kind of has to take them out. So we might as well put a noise token in here because Phil is going to have to shoot his shotgun at these brutes. It kind of means if he misses, he hits the other survivors, which is not great. But we're gonna... I'm just now realizing there's only... He only would hit on a 6, though. Now, since there's 2 brutes in the zone, it would basically take someone's entire turn to get out of this zone. Phil could try to blast wildly to take out these brutes, I guess. But I don't know if that's a good idea since we only hit on 6s, right? It might be prudent to have everybody just spend their entire turn to just move out of the room and get away from these brutes. This kind of means that unless somebody else takes them out, they'll be in the same situation next turn. And we also have 3 whole characters this turn that are going to be doing nothing. Or we can risk it and have Phil just blast wildly and maybe he gets a few 6s. And doesn't accidentally hit Doug and Ned too much. Although I guess, as I was talking about earlier, character-wise, is this a thing Phil would do? Probably. He almost certainly would. Instead of, like, saying, hey, disengage, he would just whip out his shotgun and just start shooting and just assuming that that is the optimal way to defend his friends and to get rid of the current threat. So yeah, he's just going to do that. It's just going to happen. We're looking for 6s. First shot. 2 misses, so that's 2 wounds. That's not great. Both Ned and Doug take a wound each. Not great. Okay. Yeah, the only other person that could take out these brutes is basically is Amy, and now I am just realizing we've got a toxic brute in that other room that's going to do a wound to Amy anyway, if she can kill it with her fire axe. So Amy's already pretty busy. Josh could technically slip and or jump out of that zone to get over here, but he still only has his crowbar. This is not great. Hmm. What can we say here? Because I kind of think if I have Phil just fire 2 more times, that might take out both Doug and Ned if he just keeps on missing. So I'm tempted to just say, like, his gun jams and both Doug and Ned say, fuck this, and they both get out of there and they just kind of leave Phil in there with some brutes. Because technically we can do that. We can say that Phil does nothing for the rest of his turn because he can't move away now since he used one action to shoot at the brutes. And that means Phil is going to take 2 wounds. That'll bring him down to 1. But the other survivors can at least get out of here, and Ned can scavenge something in the street. So maybe that's, I don't know, the next best thing. So we're going to do that. Phil is done. He shot. He jammed. He's trying to figure out what the hell's going on with his shotgun. Doug and Ned both say, fuck this. We're getting the hell out of here. And Doug dips. Ned dips. Ned gets one thing. And it is a shotgun. Okay. So we now have 2 people with damage to weapons that might be able to take out brutes. So that's cool. All right. But now we have to go back to these other people here. We're going to have to start with Amy to try and take out this brute. So Amy's got her fire axe, and she's desperately trying to take down this toxic brute. If she does, she scores a wound because toxic in the same zone means blood spray. But she doesn't have much of a choice. This thing has to go down. So first roll, does she get 4 or more? Amy whiffs. She misses the toxic brute. Probably because it's dark and there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of noise. Amy is trying to land a killing blow on this brute. So next melee attack, what does she get? She gets a 5. So now she does hit. Melee works a little bit differently. You don't need a 6 to hit on melee. So she does kill the toxic brute. And she does get an additional AP point for doing that, but she also gets 1 wound for taking that toxic brute down. She has 1 additional action left, so she might as well try and swing again to take out another zombie in the room. It's kind of chaotic in here. There's a lot of noise. She can't see very well, but she knows she's got to keep swinging to take these Zeds out. She gets another hit, so we're going to say she takes out the Skinner. Skinner Walker is dead, and she gets another AP for that. Okay. All right. And that generated no noise because she was doing melee with her fire axe. So, all right, cool. We have 2 more survivors in here. And let's see here. Let's start maybe with Josh to see if he can kill this Berserker Walker. It's definitely tempting to have Wanda sort of surge ahead and see if she can take these out. That might not be the wisest move, though. So we'll start with Josh. He's got his crowbar. He's trying to take out the Berserker. Can he land a killing blow? He needs a 4 or more. He misses. All right, that's a whiff. Yep, that's a whiff, Josh. Come on now. Can Josh do it? He needs a 4 or more. This is his second swing. That's a critical failure. Josh does not get it. Okay. So, last chance. Can Josh take the Berserker Walker down with his crowbar? Josh is starting to get desperate. Josh finally just barely lands a grazing blow on the Berserker Walker's skull, but manages to take him down. Wow. Berserker Walker is down. Okay. So Josh gets 1 AP for that. Also generates no noise, but his turn is over. So let's see. We did mention that Wanda is probably a bit of a loose cannon, so she might decide to just go charging into the darkness after the shuffling zombie sounds anyway. She does have 3 actions. The most sensible thing for her to do would be to move, search, and also grab that objective. And since this is a looting run, and that is what they're trying to do, Wanda decides discretion is the better part of valor, and she decides to just move ahead. She's going to search once. She gets a sniper rifle. Okay, that might come in handy at some point. And she also grabs the objective, which means there is 1 more box that we have picked up. And Wanda gets 5 AP for that, meaning she is almost in yellow now. Okay, so that was our final turn. We just need to get through the zombie phase to see what happens. So first of all, Phil is going to be taking 2 wounds here from the brutes. Phil is down to 1 wound. That is not great. Let's see here. So that's what these brutes do. And these toxic walkers move to this space. These Skinner walkers shuffle out of the darkness into Wanda's room. She is not terribly surprised. She kind of heard him coming, but it is dark, so she grips her baseball bat tightly as she prepares to engage the walkers soon. And we have more walkers shuffling right behind those, so Wanda could potentially be in some trouble here if she doesn't get some backup. So, and we still have these ones on the street, so they move forward 1 space. They're getting a little bit closer to Doug and Ned. Okay, so now we spawn. First spawn is 2 toxic runners down here. Okay, so we're grabbing a couple of toxic runners. Where the heck are they? 1 and 2. All right. Put them right down here. Next spawn is 2 Skinner walkers. Okay, 2 more Skinner walkers. Right on this zone. Okay. Next spawn is 1 flock of crows. Up here, behind those toxic walkers. And we've got 3 Skinner runners right next to those 2 boys there. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, where are they? Boom, boom. They are right here next to Doug and Ned. They are... Good thing Ned just grabbed a shotgun. He's going to need to try and waste them. And Doug has his evil twin, so they can probably just shoot him up. And they're going to need to do that, right? Okay. So, That is the end of our first session here in Playing with Fire. I hope y'all enjoyed, because I did put a decent amount of effort into this one. Not humble bragging or anything, just letting y'all know. Whole lot of painting, bit of research, writing, some of that jazz. Trying to practice the storytelling thing. Might take me a while to get a little bit better at it and get the knack down, but we do have our characters established here. We do have a setting for them. We do have some objectives for them to try and complete. And things have already gotten somewhat interesting in just the first couple of turns. Am I right? That was definitely kind of wild with Phil and his shotgun in the dark trying to take out those brutes. And under normal circumstances, he would have, but I have changed the rules somewhat. So Phil is kind of screwed. And since the other guys don't really like him that much, they said, fuck this, especially after Phil accidentally shot both of them. They got the hell out of Dodge. So Phil's not doing great if he can't get away from these two brutes here. Yeah. So if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time and your attention. There are all sorts of things that you could have done with your time, but you decided to come on over to my channel and watch me play a game and try to tell you a story. And I want to thank you for giving me a bit of watch time. So again, I hope you enjoyed. And if you are new here, I might as well describe a few ways that you can help the channel before we go. There are a few links in the description. Besides the stuff I was talking about earlier, Zombicide.com, and that one article about oral storytelling and tabletop gaming. I do have a donation page. There is a Ko-fi page that I am working on to try and make better. I've got some galleries there of all the minis that I've painted. You can go over there. You can look at those. You can donate if you want to, but I think I'm going to preface the donation page from now on by saying that money isn't real, because it kind of isn't. Money is not real. But you are. You are real, and you do need money to buy food and have a place to stay. So I won't blame anybody if they don't have the ability to and or don't want to donate to the channel, but it would be nice if you could. There are a lot of things that I do need to make this channel better. There are a lot of games that I would like to get into to show y'all. Always need more paints, and would be nice to have better audio video equipment and all that other jazz. But hey, y'all donate when and if you can, period. That's all we're gonna say about that. You can check out that link if you want to. Next link, Blue Sky. I am on Blue Sky. I do have an account there. I post updates about stuff I'm about to upload, stuff I've been working on, cute pictures of Harry, all of that jazz. You can see that by clicking on the link and checking out my Blue Sky. And in fact, if you haven't been to Blue Sky already, go ahead and check it out. It's actually kind of dope. I kind of like it. It's been working out okay so far. There's a lot of dope people there. And I don't know, if you want at least one solid reason to go to Blue Sky, it's just fuck Elon Musk, I guess. There, I said it. Fuck Elon Musk. He's a Nazi. He is. I've said it. Make Elon Musk cry more by not going to his dumb site. Go to Blue Sky. Yep. I'm standing by that. So, you can check that out if you want, and there's always the usual YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff can potentially help. You are possibly seeing the links that will take you to other things on my channel now, and this video has been long enough, right? let's just call it here, and I'm going to see y'all the next time in the next session of Playing with Fire. Take it easy, y'all. Take care of each other.